Brunswick Landing. It's a naval air station. It's got hangars, it's got the longest runway and sturdiest runway on the East Coast, so they could come to Maine. And this is what he said to me. He asked me 3 questions. 1, what's your energy cost? And I thought I'd be real smart. We're the cheapest in New England. That's an honest answer. But he said, well, how do you compare with the rest of the country? For instance, how do you compare with Alabama? We're 15 cents average. Alabama is 4 cents. So I said, but in Alabama, you'll have to spend $600 million. He said, that's correct. And in Maine, I'd only spend $250 million. But he said, you might be an okay governor, but you're very naive about energy, because I will make my money back faster in Alabama with the lower energy costs than I would to locate in Maine. So it tells me we got to look at our energy costs. An electricity bill in the city of Montreal for 1,100 square feet for a family of 4. The electricity bill, if you're not using heat, electric heat, it's going to be about $34 a month. If you use heat, it's $100. That's a major city. Then the second question, are you a right to work state? I said, no, but we're working on it. So what we tried to do last year is try to make Brunswick Landing, the Naval Air Station, and Aroostook, the Loring Air Force Base up in Aroostook County, business exempt, tax-free zones and right to work zones. And it was defeated in the legislature. And the President of the Senate said this, and I just think it's a wrong comment to make. That's why we have a new President of the Senate this year, or at least one reason. He said, if it's not a union job, we don't want it. Well, I think that's a bad attitude. Because any job that pays a good wage is a good job, and we should endorse it and we should welcome it. Because Maine people deserve to have prosperous jobs. Now, the per capita income in Maine right now, we broke $40,000. We're at $41,000. New Hampshire is 50, Massachusetts is 59, and Connecticut is over 60. There's no reason for that. Our people are every bit as good as the people in those states. We don't offer enough to people who come to Maine. Now, being the most northern state in the Union, we have to recognize that our transportation costs are higher, and so we have to take that into consideration when we negotiate with companies. So we have to become more competitive, both in energy and in our practices about attracting job creators. The best job creator that a person can ask for is one that's already living in Maine. But not every job creator or those who desire to create jobs have the resources to start and hire people. And I've always said in my business career, investment capital goes where it's welcome and stays where it's appreciated. And so we need to start welcoming job creators and appreciating them when they're here. And thirdly, he said that consistency of government is very important to job creators. And what he means is we live on budgets. We have to go through these budget cycles, and we live on a budget. So if you go if the government, the legislature decides to increase taxes halfway through the year, or they increase fees halfway through the year, that's a surprise. That's not consistency. And it shakes them up, and they don't like it, and they leave. So these are the type of things that this budget's attempting to do. It's weighted very, very heavy, and I'll be the first to admit, it's weighted heavy towards our elderly. For those who are retired, for those who have paid their dues, their lives and have had the courage to stay here through the thick and thin, the good and the bad, we are saying that if you own a home, we want you to stay in it. If you're on fixed income, we want to eliminate the income tax on your pension. We look into our military personnel and say, you fought for us. When you come here, we do not want you to have income tax on your pension, because many of the people after 20 years will retire from the military and they're still at working age, start a second career, and I don't want to be taxing their pensions, because they need that to live on while they're creating jobs. And finally, many people leave Maine for 6 months in a day, and the reason why is because the state of Maine is one of the few states that is still taxing their estates. We call it the death tax. Many small, particularly here in Maine, that's important. Because in Maine, most of the businesses that I reference to in the being a pass-through state, and the pass-through state simply means small businesses are family-owned. Usually the proprietor or the owner works very hard. They like to work, bring their family members in. Sometimes their children, sometimes their brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, and they try to build a business and leave it to family members. And in Maine, that is very difficult because we have not only a federal estate tax, but we have a state estate tax. When all is said and done, people are forced to sell their businesses in order to pay their taxes. And the very wealthy and those who have lots of money have the ability to hire very powerful and very expensive law firms and accountants oftentimes from other states to show them how to plan to protect themselves against paying the tax. I had one gentleman tell me the other day, if Maine had a 4% income tax, I'd be back by July. I love my state. I was born, brought up here, I made money in my state, but now live in New Hampshire. There's a lot to live in New Hampshire. At one time we had almost 2,000 or over, we had 1,500 to 2,000 millionaires. We're down to about 400. New Hampshire, with the same population, had roughly the same amount, 1,500 to 2,000. They're approaching 5,000. Then if you look around the country, you look at Florida, Texas, South Dakota, Tennessee, Wyoming, New Hampshire, the Carolinas, Nevada, and you look at how they've taxed their income. They either have no income tax or it's very, very low. The states that are struggling have high taxes. Let me tell you, you know those 4 states right there? Every one of those states, except for the last one, are in the top 8 welfare states in America. The only one that isn't is New Hampshire. When I became governor, we were the #1 welfare state in America. With all the beatings and all the criticism and all the uproar about what I was doing to the poor, I've only moved the needle from #1 in the country to #3. And the biggest thing I did is ask people who are able-bodied to go. I didn't say go get a job. I said look for a job. And guess what? That was enough for a lot of people to just say, we're not going to do it. We don't want you. Either we don't want the services or we're leaving. We are one of the states in America that has the largest number of asylum seekers and secondary refugees. A secondary refugee is someone who's allowed to come from a foreign country to a state. That's a primary refugee, and then they decide to leave that state to go to another state. And it's not unusual for me to hear people on Saturday mornings when they come to visit that, well, it's easy because the benefits in Maine are much better than other places. So remember this, whether you agree or disagree is not the issue. The issue is 47 other states, as I speak to you, 47 out of the 50 states are less generous than the state of Maine. And the majority of them are much wealthier than we are. So all I'm saying is we need to live within our means and try to make Maine a better place for everyone that lives here. But most certainly, for those who are natives, who have been here their lives, ought to get a better shot. So I am trying to eliminate, one, the pension on military, for military personnel, the income tax on their pensions, get rid of the debt tax. I'm trying to reduce the income tax. This step is from 7.95 to 5.75. The intent, incidentally, in 2011, we reduced the income tax from 8.5 to 7.95, and our income tax revenues went up. So higher taxes doesn't mean you get more revenue. There is a break even, I understand that, and we're trying to seek it. What I am attempting to do here is to eliminate the income tax over the next several years on Maine people. I believe strongly that too much money in government hides too many deficiencies. It hides too many sins. It hides too many inefficient and ineffective activities. I think when you have to worry about money, you spend it better. And so I really believe that we need a dose of, we don't have a revenue problem in Maine. If you look at other states our size, we have much larger budgets. What we have in Maine is a spending appetite. And so we just need to live within our means. And when you're the oldest state in the union, that's important. Now, why do I pick the income tax instead of other taxes? Very simply this. The income tax comes right off your earnings and you hardly ever see it unless you look at your pay stub and how much you paid in. If I gave you all, working people in the state of Maine, back the income tax you pay, that would be the largest wage increase you're likely to receive in your lifetime. Because in Maine, 802,000 people out of the 1,300,000 pay the entire load. They pay the entire $1.3 billion. Now, why am I trying to increase the sales tax? Well, the sales tax, 33 million people come to Maine every year. And all I want to do, and a lot of people come here for 6 months less a day, so we don't get any income tax. So I'm trying to increase the income tax, the sales tax, so I can get a little bit of that more money out of them. Because why? Because they are enjoying the beauty of our state, and the rest of us are paying for it, so I'm asking them to pay a little more. And with that, we are also, in the summer, the richest state in the union. We have some of the wealthiest people that come and stay here in the summer and then gone by September. So while they're here, I want to extract some of their resources without resorting to violence. So with that, I'll open up the questions.
All right, I think this is one of our largest crowds at a town hall yet, so thank you everybody for coming out. We are going to get to as many questions as possible. As you can see, I have quite a few here. I just have one rule, and that's that we all remain respectful. And if you so choose to stand up and shout or cause any sort of disruption, we will kindly ask you to leave. So again, let's just all remain respectful. Let's have a healthy dialogue. And with that, I'll get to the first question. It's from Janet Williams. She's from Searsport. It is about the elimination of the income tax. She asks, if eliminating the income tax is such a wonderful gift to all Mainers, why are you rushing to push through a constitutional amendment to eliminate income tax? Why not wait 5 years to see how it is working out?
Well, because that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get the constitutional amendment with a date into the future so that we can do it sensibly. There are some that will say, why don't you do it quicker? Well, you can. but I'm a very physically cautious person. You should be able to get it done this term. I should be able to get it done in the next 2 biennials. We did it in 11. We monitored what happened. And since 11, our tourism has gone way up. In fact, we're increasing our tourism enormously. Of course, and I will say that 08 and 09 were bad nationally, so our tourism went down. But it's up and going now. Why don't I wait? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I'd like to be around to see it gone. That's one reason. The other reason is if we're physically prudent, we can get this done. The constitutional amendment only puts it out into the future. And why go through all this pain if the Maine people don't want it? So, by asking you to do a constitutional amendment tells me that you want to eliminate the income tax. So to wait 5 years is really counterproductive. Because why go someplace if you don't want to do it?
Next question is from Carol Gator from Belfast. What makes you think that your proposed sales tax increases won't hit seniors and the less well-off hard?
Because, very simply this, we have two provisions in our budget. One is the fairness property tax credit, and the other is the sales tax, the fairness sales tax credit. All those people on fixed incomes and folks that are at the poverty level or below will get a rebate on the sales tax they paid in based on their income, based on what experts will tell us an average person will pay in income. So we give you a direct rebate from the state. Incidentally, there's been this enormous hoopla about revenue sharing. And they're saying, you're going to hurt our towns. And all the elected officials say you're going to hurt your town. Number one is the revenue sharing has not been taken away. It's in my budget. It's called the property fairness, the property fairness tax credit, which means people on fixed incomes will never have to pay more than 6% of their income towards property taxes because they get a rebate. So we're going to still have the revenue sharing. It's going to go back to the community, but it's going to go through the elderly and the poor first so they can pay their taxes. We have thought this through, and it's very comprehensive. I want the elected officials in the town, and I was a mayor for 8 years. I was on the city council. I was on the county commission, so I have experience in municipal government. And this is what I find. As elected officials, I was concerned about the town. As a governor, I'm concerned about the people who live in the towns. And that's why I say, any way you do this, and we have some booklets that are available and here on the front table, and please take them. Because where are we now? In Belfast? Let's look at what Belfast does. Belfast pays $5.3 million a year in income tax. That's $5,331,000 in income tax. The tax cut, the first leg of the tax cut, to go down to 5.75, would return $1,605,000 or $1,604,000 to the taxpayers of Belfast. And Belfast receives from the state $330,000 in revenue sharing. So, I guess the point is, if I give you back $5 million and I ask you to give $300,000 back to the town, how many of you would say no? You would say no.
Well, I think you short-circuited the discussion.
Okay, next question.
Next question is from Ben Cremato, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name. He is from Searsport. He says, your trickle-down plan of cutting taxes for rich is a copy of the Kansas plan, which failed. Knowing this, why do you continue this farce?
Okay. First of all, anyone that studied economics, trickle down means that you put money at the top and you let it trickle down. That's trickle down economics. But if I don't take your money that you earn, how is it trickling from your pocket to your ankles? Because I don't touch it. I'm letting you keep your own money. So whoever says that, you need to study. This is the talk of someone that wants to take more money out of your pocket. For instance, the Democratic plan that they just put out said, a better deal for Maine. We're going to increase your taxes by $100 million. How's that a better deal for you? You know, I hear that we're not having a discussion. What I'm saying to you is this. To this gentleman's point, $330,000 is not going to come from the state to the town of Belfast. It's not going to anymore. I agree. But 5.3 million is. It's going to stay in the pockets of the residents of Belfast.
Not necessarily.
It's going to stay in the pockets of the earners of the people of Belfast.
It's not going to support the city services.
What services? All they have to do, if you have $5 million more in your pocket, I will agree. They might ask you to give a little bit more. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at let's look at Belfast's.
Do you know what your mill rate is in Belfast?
Yeah, 21. Yeah, 21.
21.
Yes. It'll be going up higher.
2165.
Okay.
2165. You're getting $330,000 in revenue sharing. And yes, I would agree, it's not going to come from the state. But do you think that asking the people that have 1.6 million at the end of the year for a little more is a burden?
I think this also leads us to consolidation of services.
Yeah.
The town.
For instance, right now, today, this morning, I met with the people of Lewiston and Auburn. And they're getting together and doing a charter commission to become one city. So instead of having 2 town managers, 2 superintendents of schools, 2 police chiefs, 2 fire chiefs, 2 tax assessors, God forbid, and 2 public works directors, they're going to go to 1. I'll give you another example. The city of Lewiston alone, 36,000 people. You go to Waterville, Winslow, Oakland, and Fairfield, they all touch each other. They're all one community. Lewiston, and the 36,000 people, have 6 people that run the city. City manager, superintendent, tax assessor, police chief, fire chief, and public works director. You go to Waterville, Winslow, Oakland, and Fairfield, little less than 36,000 people. And they have 23 people doing those same jobs. 23 people. And the reason it's not 24 is Waterville and Winslow share a fire chief. That's my only point. Last night I was in Waterboro, 12 communities were there. They work together as a community. And now I asked them last night, consider sharing some of the services. And I've also asked the legislature, give me $5 million a year to work with communities, $5 million a year to work with schools. And instead of telling them they're going to consolidate, we'll ask them if they have a plan to work together, and we'll fund the front end money. You know, the state of Maine has 127 school superintendents. We have 180,000 kids. We are ranked somewhere around 38th in the nation as quality of schools. Florida has 2.8 million kids, K through 12, 64 superintendents, and they're ranked number 7 in the country. Now, there's many reasons and things that are different, but this is the telling one for me. Maine, primary language is English. Miami's primary language is Hispanic.
Call that Spanish.
Well, Spanish, well, Hispanic, they come from different parts of the
The
world.
language is Spanish.
Yes, Spanish, yes. But they're Hispanic folks. from different parts of the world. Some speak Portuguese, by the way. But the point being, when they take their verbals, they score 1 point behind Maine kids. 1 point. 1 point behind Maine kids. Maine scores have been flat for 20 years. So, look, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying we're perfect. What I'm saying is there's different ways to look at things. And we are stuck in status quo. That's all I'm trying to say.
Next question is from Sandy Cirillo from Searsport. What is the incentive to retire in Maine when Maine taxes out-of-state pensions for retirees who have earned their pension monies in another state? Please eliminate the state tax on retiree pensions.
I am working at it. I am trying very hard to do that. That's exactly what we're doing. The one thing that I'm doing, and I think a question earlier asked, why are you taking time to do it? Because we want to make sure it works. Now, do we have evidence it works? Yes. I have evidence that the states that don't have income tax, I do know they all do better than Maine. Now, Alaska, for instance. Alaska is a very, very wealthy state. They have oil. They have gas. But it's a very cold place. You can only use a very small piece of that state. But they are very, very well and fiscally sound state. And they have no income tax.
This is from Jonathan Fulfan, I believe it is, from Monroe. How do you propose to pay for the $300 million deficit that the budget creates in the first 2 years? You said last week that you would cut more education. How?
Well, first, I didn't say that. But secondly, it doesn't cut $300 million in the first 2 years. What it does is this. It's fully paid for. But the way the state does its fiscal management is it only uses one side of the financial model. If you're in business, and people that are in business will understand when I say, in business you use an income statement and you use a balance sheet. In government, you only use the income statement. So, what that means is this. If I give you back $1.3 billion, what the state believes is that money goes into a vacuum and it disappears. It's not earned, and none of it's ever going to come back to me. What I say is $1.3 billion is going to flow through the economy. It's going to have the multiplier effect, could be anywhere from 4 to 6, and then you're going to get 6.5% on that activity. So it generates its own self. The other thing is, the one thing that I said very early on is too much money hides a lot of deficiencies. It makes elected officials responsible for the money. And believe me, if you don't think they are, you follow me for a day and you'll go crazy. To see how much money and how many ideas that legislators can come up with to spend your money. You got it.
This next one is from Kathy. She was kind enough to type it out for us. I don't have her last name. I'm sorry. My question to you is this. Given that municipalities are faced with unfunded mandates, after unfunded mandate, from the state and faced with school budgets and county budgets that we have little or no control over, and we share services with other communities wherever and whenever it is beneficial to do so, where in our municipal budgets would you suggest we start cutting?
Okay. Number one, and I'll say this, and I've said it maybe 1,000 times, unfunded mandates. If the people that are elected in your communities can give me some unfunded mandates that are state-driven, they will disappear. Because, first of all, I veto 3 types of bills, and I set the record on vetoes. And these are the 3 types of bills that I veto. 1, tax increases when they're unnecessary. And the reason I say tax increase, until your state is efficient, effective, and accountable to you, the taxpayer, then I will continue to fight against increasing taxes. Number two, I veto resolves. What a resolve is this: when a very tough decision, it has to be made, the legislature will pass what is called a resolve and kick it down the road. That means we don't have the courage to do it this year, let's do it next session or after the elections. So I veto those all the time. And the third one, unfunded mandate. If a bill comes across my desk, it requires you to do something, and they won't fund it, I veto it. It might come back into law, but my veto's on it. Because, yes, 1/3 of the bills that I veto are bills that will ask communities to do things. It's going to cost money, and they don't put the money up. And I assure you that I'm like a hawk on those bills.
All right, next question is from Robert from Northport. On the sales tax, why was it increased? Can it go back down to where it was, including the restaurant tax, especially for seniors? I think you may be talking about the tax that was the temporary tax in
Okay, the
2000.
temporary tax, I vetoed, I fought against it, and I lost. It was overturned. My veto was overridden. Since I've been your governor, I have vetoed every single budget of the very first one, and I vetoed every supplemental budget because every single one of them has tax increases in it. They're hidden. A lot of them are fee increases. There's all kinds of things that they do. And I can only tell you that a lot of money is being wasted. And if you knew how some of the money was spent, you would go crazy sometimes. You'd probably start drinking. But I will tell you this, that tax was an unnecessary tax. Now, what my bill is proposing is to get rid of the income tax. If it doesn't get rid of the income tax, and the legislature votes to keep the income tax, then the sales tax will automatically go back to 5 because it sunsets July 1, June 30th.
What about the service tax? Will that go away too?
I don't know what you mean by the service tax.
Professional services?
Sorry.
Professional services, that tax?
The what?
Professional services?
Tax? Yeah, if the budget doesn't pass, there isn't one.
Next question is from Elizabeth Gould from Belfast. If our property taxes goes up due to income tax, how do the elderly who can't or who don't file taxes anyway afford to live in their homes?
They get a tax rebate from the state. The way this has been designed, there's a fairness tax credit. The elderly will have two things happening. One thing is the homestead exemption goes from $10,000 to $20,000, and then the property tax fairness credit will calculate their income, and it will refund their anything above 6% of property tax will be refunded directly from the state.
Robert Garish from Freedom. If you're cutting corporate taxes, are you going to cut subsidies also? For example, windmills and things like Great Northern Paper, Kate Street.
Okay. Kate Street wasn't a subsidy. Kate Street was a loan. And it was the tax credits was an investment of $40 million that was made in. And we bought, and I will say this, we bought 2 years of payroll, we bought 2 years of economic activity of about $250 million, the 2 years of work. Is it a good deal? No, it wasn't a good deal. Would I do it again? Absolutely. It's a very depressed area, and if I can give somebody to have economic activity for $250 million, and it doesn't cost anything but a tax credit of $60 million for, I think it's 7 years, I would do it. Now, that's Kate Street. As far as lowering the tax on the income tax. The income tax in Maine is 8.93%. I'm proposing to bring it down to 6.75%. If you take a look, we don't have the corporate tax. Maine is the 45th, right now in corporate tax, we're 45th highest in the country. 45th. I want to promote it. I want to go from 45th in the country down to 17. I'm not proposing to eliminate it. I want to be competitive with other states. We are clearly not competitive in New England. We have the highest in New England, and we have the 5th highest in the country. 5th highest tax in the country. Now, if you take a look at the highest tax in the nation at 39, then add on the 8.93, pretty soon it's becoming almost over half of the each dollar earned goes to government after you pay payroll. So it's not a good deal. Now, as far as subsidies on energy, I'm all in. I hate them. I think they're terrible. I think subsidies on windmills, on solar, don't pay for themselves. They're overpriced. We have right now energy. We have right now a standard energy for green power in Maine, and nobody's buying it. Why? Because it's the most expensive. Now, but the other side of the coin is this: Maine has some of the lowest pollution in the country. We don't generate the pollution. The pollution comes from the wind from the west to the east. I agree with that. We are very good stewards of our lands and our environment, and we can do both. We can do both at a lower cost. Natural gas is got half the footprint as oil, but we don't want to put a pipeline in. Hydroelectricity from Canada is available. It's in an abundance. We don't want it. Why? Because it's not renewable in the minds of few people in the government. Now, I don't know if you were here this past winter or if you've been monitoring the rivers, but water is renewable in Maine. It really is. And it's not nearly as expensive as wind or solar. Now, in the last 2 years, we have converted 10,000 homes. When I became governor in 2011, 80% of the homes in Maine were heated with oil. Now we're down to 62, 63%. In the last 2 years,